my slide. I'm also, I just remembered to record, which was an important component from Brianne. Okay, let me share what I've got. Mary, you should see slides now.
Okay, I see slides, thank you.
Okay,
and
perfect.
can I bring up the individual slide, or I have to read all of them?
This is all just one slide. This is,
Okay.
it is a wordy document that we're going to go through today.
Okay, go for it. Sorry.
Okay. No worries at all. So we're going to start with all the components that we see now, like Brianne had mentioned. So we're working through the stickies that we see. If you guys have done this in advance, move forward, but I think we're probably all on the same page. Blue is from Richmond 300. Green are some brainstorms we had last week that weren't quite fitting for the objective. And then the objective, this thing at the top, is what we worked on last week. And this has been rephrased from the 3 that the Office of Sustainability presented to us. So I think at the beginning we were like, need green spaces for everybody. And we really struggled with where to put equity in there. So they've changed it to make sure all residents have equitable connections, which means information, engagement opportunities, and physical access to healthy natural resources, spaces, and species. If anyone has any comments on that, you can let me know. I can write them down, or anyone can access the notes section at the bottom of the slide too. You can put anything there. I'm hoping, I see some red stars, which should mean that that's a priority. We really like that strategy idea. An orange X means more like it doesn't fit with Richmond or RVAgreen 2050, like it's not a perfect match for an equity and climate solutions plan, or you don't love it. Mary, I wish I could, I'm gonna try to make these.
I can't do it, yeah, I can't do it, but that's okay. Don't worry, I'll give my oral feedback.
Okay, you got it.
So Jen,
yes.
I like what how the objectives have been rephrased a lot, actually. I wonder with this, and just to be curious to hear reactions or whatever. I love the idea this is phrased as equitable connections to kind of natural spaces, etc. There's nothing in here about increasing the connectivity of those natural, like having an eye on actually making connected spaces making connected spaces, right? It's making connections to spaces, but it's not about making connected spaces. Do you know what I mean by that?
Totally. So, focusing more on you get to point A, but not point A and point B being connected.
Right, exactly, right. I don't know if it's here or not, or
I wonder if it's a good strategy opposed to something in the objective. But I understand too that it's that important that perhaps it should be in the objective.
I concur that it should be in the objective.
Okay.
And my stars are not, I'm on the slide, but my stars are not registering.
They're not moving for you?
No.
Want to let me know which ones you want stars on? I'll move them for you.
Across the board for, first one, across the board, more capacity for maintenance and, oh, no, yeah. And they're shifting around. No, ensure equitable geographic distribution of resources.
Okay, got it.
Okay, that would be for me too.
You've got it, Mary.
Okay, and I like the increased outreach about how to get to parks, green spaces, and how you can use them.
Got it.
I have a question about the Adopt a Street, Adopt a Tree program. I mean, like, I've seen those kinds of things, the Adopt a Highway stuff, but what does it actually amount to? Is it the commitment of going out there and doing the cleanup yourself, or is it a financial commitment to the space? What is it actually?
I'm gonna make notes of that, but I'll tell you my understanding, yeah, but it does need to be more specific. It can be like if you and I wanted to adopt a street, we could go do it. It also means that we'll clean it up. If we were I just feel like they're always chiropractors, but if we're a chiropractor's office and we do it, we probably just pay. And then there's not always, then it becomes another maintenance thing for somebody else to do. And are we positive it's done as timely as you and I, as two really active, diehard street cleaners, would go do it.
Right.
Oh, should it even be included as a included? This is from the master plan, right? So we
Yes.
just open it
Yeah.
down.
So this is in Richmond 300.
Would be for making it a more general, adopt educational programs that offer people an opportunity to experience the green world. That's not said very well, but make it more general, because there are lots of other things like education in urban farming and getting kids, to the James River.
Right. I hear that.
Yeah, I think that's important.
Use the Adopt a Street as an example. But this is a strategy. It's not a, tactic.
Right. Well, I think that our strategies might sort of become tactics. I do think we don't need to make them completely smarty today, like measurable, specific quite yet. But I do think that we'll dive into that next week. Like I think next week, where we meet on Wednesday instead of 2 Mondays from now, we're going to be like, by 2050, do this, or by 2022, have this done, or increase funding by 15%. So we are going to get more specific in these as we go on. We can cover what we can today, but I'm not sure I think we're past the point of lofty goals. And so I think the comments of what does this really mean are smart ones too, that we need to not just make a wish list that's vague, maybe.
Can we include education in the second green box, which is increased outreach? I think education is an important aspect of outreach. So can we say increased education and outreach?
Yep.
I like that.
And I'm curious about what does this even mean? Trauma reduction. I mean, I feel like trauma is it's a strong word that means a lot of different things in a lot of different contexts. Like, what exactly are we trying to reduce there?
Got it.
Somehow that doesn't even fit for me. I mean, it's an important goal for the city, but it doesn't fit for me with what we're doing.
So
Yeah, I don't think
I
we
feel
should.
like I was in the group where that came up last time, and I think the idea behind that is that, like, this year more than ever has been traumatic for everyone. I think it was the idea of green space as a healing space, however, and so maybe, yes, but trauma reduction is kind of, maybe that's not the right word, but I think that's what the conversation was about last time or whenever we talked about these.
I can speak to the fact that comes up in the community working group too. Trauma reduction as a way to help those who have formerly been excluded from our green and natural spaces to feel welcomed in them instead. So probably needs more clarity there.
Yeah, I think I would think of it as nurturing the spirit, including trauma reduction, because you can nurture a spirit that hasn't been traumatized, and you also can nurture a spirit that has.
Got it.
Yeah, maybe with that one, we say some way to make it clear that everyone is invited to the space. I mean, I know we say that we're trying to create these equitable opportunities, but sometimes people just need to be invited and feel like they can play there, be there.
Noted.
Yeah, well, I think you do need to do more than invite. I think you need to get them there. So, because they don't always know that they want to be there.
I think that maybe to that point, it's not so much about inviting people as much as establishing a sense of community ownership, because it's not that they need an invitation to go someplace they already belong, already have ownership to. It's reinforcing that access is not granted by some outside party. You are innately allowed to be here and you don't need permission.
I love that.
Me too, especially because then that ownership sort of goes to that adopt a tree thing that all of us engaged citizens on this call don't really know what it is. But it's, you know, once someone owns a space, they're more likely to take care of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I really like that.
There's a lot of strategies from the other cities related to this objective about urban agricultural. I don't know that that's captured in our strategies yet.
I
Maybe
second that.
I think urban agriculture gets down to that I assume there's a lower level, a tactics level, you know, what you're actually going to do. We might get urban agriculture, including urban agriculture or something, but that would be a program and a good educational one.
So after these strategies comes an implementation plan.
Yeah.
But I do think, Todd, you're right, that if we want something included, it needs to somehow be here, or how will we know to put it in the implementation plan? So today's goal is, we're doing great. It's this, I want everybody to brain dump as many things as they might want to see in the RVAgreen 2050 plan.
Okay, well, I've got a horse I want to ride. And my horse, probably some of the rest of you too, is native plants. The concept of native plants as a way of reducing greenhouse gases and creating a sustainable green environment. And those of you that are gardeners are pretty familiar with why native plants are more important than introduced plants.
I think along the points of gardening, the natural plants, the urban agriculture, I moved in December to Manchester, and I've been in Northside for the past previous 5 years. And for the first time in my life, I'm pretty sure I live in a food desert. I'm not 100% certain.
You are 100% certain?
Well, I wasn't sure if maybe I was being over dramatic about it all. Maybe I just hadn't figured out where my spot is. But it is something that I feel like could be addressed in conjunction with the access to community gardens and natural resources. I think about the fact that I love being an apartment dweller because I believe that lawns are not good for the environment, and there's a lot of environmental advantages to multifamily housing. But one distinct loss is the fact that we can't really participate in much urban agriculture of our own, even just like a tomato garden to make our own salsa or sauce or something, you know. We can't participate in that side of urban living, and there needs to be some kind of a compensatory something that could probably tie in nicely with access to these green spaces.
Well, if you live in Manchester, you could go to whatever, there used to be a little 1 acre farm up there about 15th and, it was about 7th or 8th and 9th and Bainbridge.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tricycle Gardens.
Triangle Garden. Mhm.
Yeah, I walk by there regularly, and it's kind of what alerted me to the idea that I know that I grew up also out in the country. I know that little parcel of land is not enough to supply vegetables to every family who lives in that neighborhood. Yeah. So while it's great that it's there, it's definitely not adequate for making a substantial supplement to people who maybe don't have otherwise access.
No, but there, for instance, if you lived in Westminster, Canterbury, you would not lack for green space to piddle in.
That's true.
Because you'd be paying enough money to get it. If you live in Hillside Court, you probably don't have it.
That's true.
I also have one horse to ride. That has to do with our plans are very nice. I still don't see, I think the objectives are very, very general, and I'd like to see more specific address, even in the objective as it relates to measure of emissions. So maybe something like measure the emissions profile of specific industries and communities, because it's a lot of, I see these as remedy, but the biggest I still don't see us addressing the largest greenhouse and emissions causes.
Right. Can you tell me where you read that objective? I just am lost.
I didn't. That's why I said I'd like to see it.
Okay. I think I noted that. I'll bring it back to Brianne. I think that we see those because I think you're probably talking about like energy, transportation, those kind of sectors, or.
Well, but I'm just speaking overall as a community objective. So, you know, those are specific, but we haven't addressed them. I haven't seen it addressed in the objectives at all. So I think, you know, the objectives of the action plans, I still don't see them.
Okay.
Noted.
Yeah. I would like a star up there under create public-private partnerships to help the city maintain and manage high-quality parks.
Got it.
And green infrastructure. We got plenty of places like there used to be SunTrust Bank down there by the flood wall where we should get SunTrust in there doing something.
I just to revisit Monica's point, I think it's a good one, and I can understand that the reaction to that is, well, that objective's addressed in other working groups like the community group or whatever. But I do think that this group is, all the objectives are like resilience based, right? And something related to actual air quality, carbon emissions, or something like that might be nice to consider.
Okay. So I think I understand now. So we can do air quality, carbon emissions. That was kind of what Brianne hinted at, that we might end up with a fourth objective in this group. We have a few minutes left here. We can either stay here or we can go, I will go to where we can start to make those suggestions. So if you end up with time or want to do homework, slide 43. So somebody's already had these thoughts, or maybe it's you. Strategies that don't fit into what we're currently talking about. So we do want a specific objective.
Objectives or strategies?
What was that?
Objectives. No, objectives,
want
not
objectives.
strategies as an objective.
Okay.
So we want one more closely aligned with greenhouse gas reductions, air quality, and carbon sequestration. Does that start us on the right track, Monica?
Well, I think as an objective, as an action, something to measure those. You know, just to throw it in there, you know, we want to reduce, maybe that's what the whole plan is about. But so as an objective, I think we want to measure those. I mean, I know it's already, you know, it's implied, but it should be stated.
Yeah, considering one of our strategy rules up here in the red box is must reduce greenhouse gas, we may as well call it out.
I think that in the spirit of calling that out, I don't really see anything through this process, and I'm just kind of realizing it, that seems to point proper accountability on corporations as being the leading perpetuators of these problems. Households and individuals contribute a micro amount of what these large corporations do. We're home to Dominion and other large businesses that, frankly, they're creating more problems singularly than all the residents put together, and none of what we're doing is properly putting a finger where it needs to be.
Yeah.
Well put.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's a funny line to balance, especially for the office of sustainability, because all they can, I'm going to switch. Brianne will take it from here. I am going to go to breakout room 2.
Yep, you're going to 2, and if you could let Kyla know to just exit the breakout room, she'll be in the main room.
You bet. This one may be recording. I have no idea. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thanks, Jen.
Thank you.
Hi, all. Am I interrupting?
Jen.
Oh, not. Kyla, you get to go to breakout room, main room, maybe?
Main room.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
See
sweet.
y'all later. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. We are on, I don't know what I just interrupted. I feel like I just walked into a very fun room and then it got very quiet. We are on slide 29. It's a mess. It'll be okay. We'll have a lot of fun. If you found a flow that works really good for you in your first round with Kyla, you just let me know and I'll hop to the back, but we're going over objective 1, which is the connections to green spaces. I would love, since my first group did not love it, if we actually went over the objective specifically to start before we jump into strategies. I'll read it to you because it's fun. Make sure all residents have equitable connections, connections meaning information, engagement opportunities, and physical access to healthy natural resources, spaces, and species. It's kind of a tongue twister, but the content is there. Marinate on that for a second, and then we can dive in. If you like to not talk and just work in the doc, you can. If anyone can't access the doc, let me know.
And can you remind us what that objective used to be? What this is the edit of?
Yeah, I will. I'm going to pull up the actual first round. It'll take me a second. It was very different. Give me
Yeah, I like this in theory. I think it's pretty clear and specific, but it is wordy.
It's not meant
It's a
to be
trade-off.
slam poetry. In one thing, if it's food for thought, while I still look for round 1, was my first group did not like that this doesn't specifically, it addresses that all of us would have connections to this green natural space with resources and species diversity, doesn't address the connections between those green spaces. I'd love your all's take on if that should be a strategy underneath the objective, or if it should specifically be in the objective as well.
It's a good point. It seems like the objective is already so loaded up with words and information, but that also seems more important than the level of a strategy.
Jen, can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Okay, current objective, which is that wordy tongue twister I had.
Yeah.
It doesn't specifically, in its tongue twister way, address connectivity between green spaces. It only addresses a person's connectivity to green spaces. So it doesn't necessarily talk about green corridors between them, or not green corridors. So the first group kind of thought it should be in there. I'm happy to work with that. So we kind of struggled with whether it belonged in the objective or whether it was a strategy.
Right.
Our strategy is a very full strategy.
Did they have a strong recommendation as to how to reword it if they did want to incorporate it into the objective?
No.
Okay.
Maggie, it started as provide equitable access to nature.
Okay, thank you. I think this is an improvement for sure.
Okay.
Or that's just my opinion, but right, it makes it so loaded up with stuff that it's hard to fit in something else like interconnection.
My inclination would be that I like it as it is, and I think the connectivity piece could be a strategy within it.
Any further thoughts on that? I'm happy to move on for our 20 minutes with this very messy slide. I'm assuming that most here can access the slide. If you need me to share it, you just let me know. My last group could not, so that is why I look like I single-handedly attacked it. I'm taking silence as a good thing. Okay, so part 2, I'm moving on. I'm not the dictator though, so you guys just tell me if you want to take a step back. Green is ideas that we as a group created last go around. So strategies that kind of came out of our discussion of providing equitable access to nature. Blue is from Richmond 300, almost verbatim. I think Brianne made them slightly more readable in some cases and cut out details that were superfluous for the point of sticky notes. And on slide 30, I've got some of the new ideas from my last group. We also went straight down to slide 43, which is stuff that doesn't fit at all, because we wanted to talk about carbon sequestration as well. my number one goal is a brain dump of all your great ideas on what strategies need to go into making sure that all Richmonders have equitable connections to healthy natural resources and green spaces and the opportunity to observe Richmond's biodiversity. But you can also drag a orange X to anything you just don't like or doesn't fit in with the RVAgreen 2050 plan, or a red star to anything you do like, or we can make comments on anything that confuses you or that isn't quite perfect. But I will leave you guys to direct how the rest of this goes. If you are quiet, introspective, play with the Google Slides people, I'm all for it. If you want me to take notes, that's what I'm here for.
Yeah, before you jumped in, we hadn't spoken a word, so we might be the introspective type, but
Yeah, we were
who knows?
silent with Kyla.
Really?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wow, I
That
just
was more
monologued
her
then.
suggestion.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
if it works for you, go for it.
So it doesn't seem like there's anything in here now about the interconnection between green spaces, right? Okay, so we should
I
have
am
that.
adding that to
Okay.
one of the slides or one of the stickies on 30, but
Perfect.
no, I was scared to move around with my last group. They needed stationary slides with less technology happening.
Isn't it like on the right above where you're typing, Jen, connecting existing and new green and natural spaces? Would that be kind of the same thing?
Yeah, that is kind of the same. I'll make a comment because I'm not positive that that is as
Yeah.
clearly and like profoundly like they wanted it to be the objective itself. But yes, thank you, Wafame. Also sticking the laundry list that Brianne mentioned earlier into the chat if anyone wants more outside ideas. That's got some from Richmond 300, a couple other working docs, including the consultant that they're using for the modeling, had some suggestions that are in there, and ideas from other cities' climate action plans as well. Though I know you all are staring at your screens because you're coming up with such great ideas. We've got 5 minutes left. If there's anything you're dying to say about objective number 1 that you want to say out loud, this is your 300-second warning.
My one point of feedback is that some of these, like, establish a sense of ownership, ensure equitable distribution, include advocacy, seem a little vague. And I know that we sort of drill down on these as we progress through the process. So I don't know if there will be time to put, or there will be a more appropriate time to really put detail to that, if that comes next.
Yeah, we'll do that next Wednesday to some extent. I agree that the ones you mentioned are a little more vague than I think we need to have right now. So we can like say things like create a new division or, I don't know, like you can dream relatively specifically right now, although we'll drill down on dates, how like percentages, stuff like that next week to some extent. So we don't need to say, if you want to, you can, but we don't need to say by July 1st of 2022, develop this thing. But I do think that, you know, employed community members in the stewardship of green spaces, we could, you know, via parks, via groundwork, via new organization that we'll found together,
Right.
Something like that. So I'd feel free to elaborate. I will take a note that some of these are too vague to be strategies as is.
Mm-hmm. I can add a comment too. Jen, did your last group talk at all about investing in existing spaces that are maybe not maintained or served as well?
They did not.
Okay. Is that something that fits in here?
Yeah, definitely.
I can add something.
This would also be the, like, in addition to ramping up what we already have, it's protecting what we have or making it better, because I'm certain there's some areas that could use some TLC, or, you know, maybe those are the places that need connections or need new services too. These, if you have any strokes of genius, which I'm sure you will, these slides are still going to be available for homework if you want them. That's a relatively loose homework. I'm also thrilled because next I think you have Brianne, and I know that you guys are just going to come out of your shells and talk for the whole 20 minutes. And I can't wait to hear it. And she'll say, guys, what did you do wrong?
We're slowly building to that.
I can't wait to see what group 3 does. Like, first I had Chatty Cathy, and then I have the most introspective, smart, cunning people. And I don't know what to expect for group 3, but I know who's in it. So that's kind of the fun part. Like I know what I'm going to walk into.
Well, we talked 10,000% more this time than we did last time.
It's an improvement.
Brianne, have a lot of fun.
Oh, all right. So Jen, you can be able to just exit the breakout room. Okay.
Leave, yeah.
You'll be in the main room, and let Kyla know I'm switching her as well.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Jay.
They chop it up, mulch it up, and you know it's no better than scrap. When we
Hi,
could be
all.
getting value. Hey, Jen.
I'm sure I'm interrupting a really valuable conversation about heat and drought, but we're going to move on. I'm really sorry. You can come back to this anytime. But I want to get your perspective on objective number 1. And we're going to start with that. We're on slide 28, 29, 30, and 31. I'm assuming everybody has access to the slides. If you don't and you want me to share my screen, let me know. They're a disaster at this point, but it's going to be fun. We're going to start with the objective because I've had a couple conversations so far, and I want to make sure that we're on track for the objective. It started last time as, quote, provide equitable access to nature. It is now a tongue twister. Make sure all residents have equitable connections, which is information, engagement opportunities, and physical access to healthy natural resources, spaces, and species. It's not going to be good for my slam poetry career. I'll let you noodle that for a second, but if you have any thoughts on if that's complete, if it's lacking something, let me know. One of my groups, or both my groups so far, have not loved that it doesn't include the connections between green spaces. It just includes connections to. And I'm curious for your take on if that needs to go into the objective, or connections to green spaces can be a highly prioritized strategy underneath it.
And transportation, I know once we talked about this, is the transportation team who's working on this. Are they going to address the connection to parks, or should we be addressing transportation to parks?
I am putting that in the notes, and I'm sure that the sustainability office will make sure that it's not redundant, but that's a good point that it might not even fall in our jurisdiction. But I don't think that it is written as their objective necessarily. So I don't think it's, if we wanted it that high of a level, I don't think it's at the objective level. I think it's a strategy in the transportation realm.
I see the parks holiday, and I'm thinking there already are 2 park holidays.
Yeah. There's a,
but not city designated. There's a state and a national, which happened to coincide on the same day in September. But we don't have the same, it would make sense to establish the same timeline for the city.
That's for September's National Trails Day?
No, National Parks Day.
Okay.
And what happens is that the state and the federal government open up all their parks for free. Usually you pay an admission fee to get in, and they just open it up. So it's called National Public Lands Day. September.
Oh, yeah, okay. Cool, yeah. Last Saturday, September, got it.
Yep.
Okay.
And it's the same designation as the state.
Are you all a quiet, introspective group until you decide to not be a quiet? I don't know what to expect, but if you found a system that works for you, go for it. Obviously, we're looking for feedback on the strategies that are already presented, and somebody already found slide 31, which is for new ideas. So I'll let you guys go at it. If you want to chat, I'll take notes. But if you like reading, go for it.
Yeah, just digesting all of the ideas right now.
Good luck.
You know, one thing, and this is interesting, I see the Richmond Grows Gardens Community Garden Program, and talking to Duran, and this is something that had been explored at one point, but that is to provide housing close to places that people work. So, you know, if let's say Bryce had a host of 20 people who worked in the park system, wouldn't that be nice, Bryce?
We'll get there someday.
To have some sort of housing available to them very close to the park system. Same thing with like the urban gardeners have their housing close to their place of work. This kind of all comes out of some of the discussions that were held here a decade ago about arts and an arts district and providing housing for the artist community in the district. So I don't know if we call it a green district or something like that, where the housing could be made closer for the people who work there.
Yeah, it kind of goes with the old Civilian Conservation Corps and all of our state parks kind of things too, where I was housed at on site. And it certainly highlighted it this past couple of weeks with these weather events where you have some people who are trying to commute in from far distances and risking their safety versus some who are much closer and it's much easier to respond.
Mm-hmm. And can you explain to me what is meant by equitable connections to species?
I cannot. I also have seen, I mean, I can tell you what was intended, that we would be providing equitable access for all Richmonders to get out and see species within Richmond. So I don't know if we could be like, that's your local squirrel, that's deer in the park, that's the ospreys on Teapot. I haven't seen a single, I can't drive this conversation by myself, although it would be fun. I haven't seen a single sticky about observing or interacting or seeing those species that's very specific. So it's in there, but I haven't seen it addressed yet.
I think it's odd.
An odd phrasing.
Species, yes. I mean, in some cases, that's not a good thing. I mean, you don't necessarily want to engage with a fox.
You want wildlife, or is that like a happier word, or is it not quite right, or do you think it doesn't belong in the objective?
I would just say habitat. Change it to.
I'll play devil's advocate, although I see what you mean. I don't disagree. We're going to get some people in our working group who are here because they want to protect the species and wildlife. So we can't, although they should have put a sticky in to address the species and wildlife. That is why it's that high.
Right, but if they're trying to protect them, shouldn't people not have access to them?
I think I'll rephrase protect to recognize intrinsic value and protect. But I mean, you guys heard me read that objective number 1 is going to become a whole novel if we keep, you know, we can't say all that in one, which is unfortunate. So I think it's folks, you know, it's probably twofold, right? Like, it's like, yes, we want to watch the osprey cam and we want to see whatever raptor has survived on the top of the downtown building. And we want to know that there's a sturgeon in the river, even if we don't see it right now.
Would we say maybe then, instead of species, say something like value biodiversity?
That could get us there. I noted that. Do you think that is specific enough?
Well, I mean, we're also the biophilic city, right, Justin? That's your big thing. And that's to support biodiversity. Mm-hmm. So how do we then incorporate the biophilic city model into this strategy or objective?
Well, Parker, the objective is about connecting to those things. Maybe if we could just find another way to say, you know, and to observe natural habitats or something. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a.
It's a little bit, when I first read the revised objective, I thought species stood out in an odd way, mostly because it is a natural resource and we haven't called out other natural resources. So I almost feel like if you just delete species, because it is a natural resource, species are natural resources, you get there. But Jen, I totally hear your, the point you made about people having an interest in, you know, protecting our local wildlife or flora and fauna. I totally get that.
Right. Well, because I can hear the response in my head of species aren't a resource. They're there for us. You know, they're not there for us to use. They're, you know, they were here first. I can hear that in my head. If we just put species in natural resources, not from everybody, but we got a few on this group who will advocate for them.
I'm all about the species, but it does read a little weird to me.
I'm hearing that maybe it's odd to include them in connections here, like that maybe we have connections to natural resources and spaces, and species needs a different phrase. It's not just lumping them in there, that it's protecting biodiversity or not connecting with, but doing something different. Thanks for being here, Fraser.
Bye, guys. I'm sorry.
No worries.
Have a good one, Fraser.
I can't wait to hear how this gets resolved.
Me too.
I just
Like throwing the grenade and leaving the room.
I love it. I love it so much.
People are going to interpret this in different ways regardless, so I think we're going to get hung up on it. I agree with removing species, but yeah, natural resources, we can put in all the biotic and abiotic factors that go into it. I don't think we're utilizing them in resource in such a way that we have to use them, but we are in a city, so trying to make a preserve in the middle of a city is probably not doable.
The other thing that I've heard a lot about, and that is to making these places safe and welcoming. And I don't really see that referenced.
Yeah, it's definitely been something that's been on my mind, the welcoming part, because not everybody sees a big green wall as welcoming.
One of my groups talked about that with they wanted to expand on the trauma reduction as a benefit in more needed and impacted communities, and some didn't understand that. So we talked about like working that into part of making welcoming communities. And then it imploded to also include like education and outreach and a lot of the other stickies. So I think that we do need to tease that out, that there needs to be some priority to make places welcoming to all, which does include letting people know that they've got a park, you know,
and what to expect within that park too.
Not all parks are equal, right, Bryce?
Very true. I think a big part when we've been trying to do more of the welcoming piece.
Yeah, I mean, the dog's off of a leash. That makes it very unwelcoming in certain places. So, you know, it's making it safe. It's one of those of also enforcing park rules.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you show up to the park and there's 20 teenagers with their coolers of beer.
setting a certain expectation for responsible usage, but working with the community for the best way to promote that as you enter a park and value it, raising the value of green space. So it may not be the same for everybody, but at least there is some value behind it. I don't know how to put that into words though, or policy. yes, the dogs off leash. People do not come to the river due to dogs off leash.
I'm capturing these notes happily. We're also recording, so you don't have to say it perfectly right now. We'll say it perfectly later.
Has it been brought up with when we develop these green spaces that the property values go up in and around that area, so then it starts to gentrify the area? Has that been addressed in any type of way through any of the notes or discussions?
Yeah, I'll read you the sticky that's most pertinent. Explore the adoption of policies that prevent green gentrification, especially by ensuring affordable housing options amidst improvement to green infrastructure and communities. I'd say that's got a lot going on in it. So it is there as a singular goal, not too specific on what those policies are. So,
well,
barely.
I guess in the greater sense, if we have a 5 to 10 minute walkability everywhere in the city, that starts to make it more equitable in a sense, but it is challenging. But I see that in the sticky note though.
Should we say like annex portions of Henrico County?
You can make that a sticky, although I think a lot of people would rather have it the opposite way sometimes.
No, I'm teasing. That was the
I know.
annex that always comes up when people get into planning discussions.
Last group are, we're now combined with Brianne's last group. So.
Did you all, Jen, did you all get the time reminders being in the room? You did?
I didn't get the last, if we had one more last 1 minute one, I didn't, but I saw the 5 minute one.
I didn't do, yeah, I just did the closing breakout rooms. So y'all probably didn't see that because you're not in a breakout room. So the other breakout room should be joining us in just a second. Y'all feel free to keep typing, discussing anything, while the other group is joining us probably in the next 30 seconds or so. And I'm just gonna get my screen back up here.
Wafa May and Maggie, how chatty were you?
About the same as with you. We were a quiet group today.
Yeah, I'm having such a Monday. So it's
No, that honestly, it's totally fine. Whatever way that y'all work best, especially when we're asking you to get all of your ideas down on paper, or in this case, a Google slide. We are just here to help if you have like questions or comments that you want to discuss. So no problem with a quiet meeting, especially on a Monday like this. All right, so I think we've got everybody who's still in the meeting back. So I'm gonna just share my screen as we wrap up. So thank you all so much for all of your new ideas, your comments, questions, discussions, your stars, your X's, if there are any. I can't see any right now. But what we're going to be doing from now until our next meeting is internally as staff, we will be working through all of the ideas that you all have provided us today, as well as the ideas that are being provided by other working groups, just to see if there's any overlap between groups, just to make sure we're being efficient in all of that. At our next meeting, we're going to be starting back with the ideas that you all came up with today that will be cleaned up, and we'll be talking more about how to implement these ideas. So getting more into the nitty-gritty of who does it, when do we want it done by, how do we measure success, things like that. For now, though, just to wrap up, if you'd like, feel free to keep adding ideas and comments and stars and all of that to these slides over the next couple days. We as staff will probably be looking at these towards the end of the week to start gathering all of the feedback. And then thanks to everybody who did the doodle poll to reschedule our next meeting. It will be held on Wednesday, March 3rd from 3 to 5. If this time doesn't, so you should have a calendar invite. If this time doesn't work for you, you can just let me know and I'm happy to send you like the activity slides and whatnot beforehand. I will also, as always, send those out after the meeting so that you can participate on your own time. For now, I'm going to stop sharing and put the feedback survey that we always have into the chat if you'd like to fill that out in the last minute or so. Also, does anyone want to share any upcoming events, updates about your organization, or resources? Feel free to unmute or put links in the chat.
Muted.
And if not, there is one thing going on that you all are probably all aware of, which is the RVA Environmental Film Festival. I believe it wraps up at the end of this week. Our office will actually be hosting a film and discussion on the 26th, which is Friday. Yes, but you can see the whole schedule on the website. And if that's it, then you all can sign off, and thank you again.
Wait, this is Monica.
Oh, hey, Monica, yeah.
Hey, I want to announce an event. It's an environmental justice event occurring on March the 3rd from 9 to 11 called On Current Watch. And I think it's important because one of the things that that I keep elevating is the importance of industry in reduction of greenhouse emissions and carbon. So I'm including the registration link in the chat for anybody interested. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share.
Awesome, thanks Monica, and I'll share that in our email follow-up too. Y'all can email me any other events and things, updates and stuff, and I'll send them out to the group. But feel free to sign off. Thank you all so much again, and look forward to seeing you next time. Bye everybody.
Brianne?
Yes.
You never followed up with me after the last meeting.
Oh, yes. Kendra is actually going to be following up with you. Sorry,